حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفر إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله سبحان الله سبحان الله أستغفر الله الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا لطيف ارحم عبدك ضعيف الذليل بجاه محمد وآل بيته الطاهرين الله أكبر الحمد لله بسم الله وبالله وخير الأسماء لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل اللهم صل على محمد وآل اللهم صل على محمد وآل الله أكبر
أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا شديد القوى ويا شديد المهال، يا عزيز يا عزيز يا عزيز، ذلت بعظمتك جميع خلقك فاكفني شر خلقك. يا محسن يا مجمل يا منعم يا مبذل، يا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربنا الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربنا الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربنا الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بحول الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله. سبحان الله والحمد لله. أستغفر الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله. سبحان الله. سبحان الله. أستغفر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا ولي العافية نسألك العافية عافية الدنيا والآخرة بجاه محمد وآل بيته الطاهرين. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. بسم الله وبالله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم بحق ابا عبداللہ الحسین. یا اللہ આપણા માજે ભાઈઓ બહેનો બચ્ચાઓ બીમાર હોય આપણે દુઆ કરે કે અલ્લાહ લોકો બધાને શફા દે, બધાની તકલીફો દૂર થાય. આપણા આલિમો મરજા મોમિનીન ને મોમિનાત દુનિયામાં જ્યાં બી હોય યા અલ્લાહ તું અલકાને હિફ્ઝો અમાનમાં રાખ, અમારી બધી હાજતો પૂરી કર, અમારા ઇલ્મમાં વધારો કર. એવી દુઆ સાથે આપણે બધા સાથે 5 ફેરે અમ્મા યુજીબ પડીએ. औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम. बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम. अम्मन युजीबुल मुस्तर्रा इज़ा दअ व यक्शिफु सू. 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 सूरह फातिहा शिफाउल मर्ज़ व दफ़्निल बला.
أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا شديد القوى ويا شديد المحال يا عزيز يا عزيز يا عزيز ذلت بعظمتك جميع خلقك فاكفني شر خلقك يا محسن يا مجمل يا منعم يا مفضل يا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Holy Quran.
Mu'mineen, as you're leaving the places you are praying in, if you see any keys, please do hand them into the treasurer's desk, as some keys have been reported lost.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا السماء انشقت وأذنت لربها وهقت وإذا الأرض مدت وألقت ما فيها وتخلت وأذنت لربها وهقت. يا أيها الإنسان إنك كادح إلى ربك كدحا فملاقيه فأما من أوتي كتابه بيمينه فسوف يحاسب حسابا يسيرا وينقلب إلى أهله مسرورا وأما من أوتي كتابه وراء ظهره فسوف يدعو ثبورا ويصلى سعيرا إنه كان في أهله مسرورا إنه ظن أن لن يحور بلى إن ربه كان به بصير فلا أقسم بالشفق والليل وما وسق والقمر إذا اتسق لتركبن طبقا عن طبق فما لهم لا يؤمنون وإذا قرئ عليهم القرآن لا يسجدون بل الذين كفروا يكذبون والله أعلم بما يوعون فبشرهم بعذاب أليم إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لهم أجر غير ممنون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم مؤمنين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today, Monday, the 12th of September 2022, eve of 16 Safar 1444, the announcements are as follows. Tomorrow, Tuesday, the 13th of September, the ladies' morning majlis will start at 10 a.m. with Quran and a majlis in English or Gujarati by Sister Shirin Bai Tejani. The main program will start at 7:45 p.m. with Salatul Maghribain and a majlis by Sheikh Anwer Jaffer. Hujjat is hosting, in collaboration with Al-Hadi Youth, a 10-minute Instagram live series every Arba'in night at 11 p.m. titled Reminders and Reflections to Take from Karbala. Today's speaker is Brother Muhammad Tahir. The topic is exploring the infamous statement, I saw nothing but beauty. Follow the KSIMC Instagram page to join tonight's Instagram live, which will start promptly at 11 p.m. All are welcome to watch. Tabarruk team humbly requests you for health and safety reasons to be seated after ziyarat so that tea can be served easily and quickly. The weekend Fajr Namaz program starts on Sunday, 18th of September 2022 and will start at 6 a.m. with Jamaat Namaz followed by a lecture by Maulana Qalbi Abbas, Surah Yasin, Ziyarat and Tabarruk wa Niyaz. Co-ed census is live and available online. Many of us have already submitted, but not all. Please take a moment to go to our website or the co-ed website directly and have your say so that the community needs and are heard and appropriate steps are taken for the future. Brothers, please think back to our youth. Who taught you fiqh, tariq, akhlaq and Quran? Now think about what you are doing to teach the next generation. Hujjat Saturday Workshop is looking for male volunteers aged 16 plus who can give at least 1 hour on a Saturday morning to help teach the next generation. Teacher training and support will be provided. Please speak to Brother Ali Bai at the Treasurer's desk in the main hall after the main program for further information. We have launched our emergency Pakistan flood appeal to help those suffering with the torrential floods in Pakistan. The World Federation aid teams is on the ground serving those in need. Please donate via our website or at the Treasurer's desk. For recitation requests, please email your request to recite to recite@hujjat.org. That is recite@hujjat.org. And the Niyaz fund is open. Please donate generously at the Treasurer's desk. Those who are parking in Rugby, please pay £1 at the Jamaat desk, and please do switch off your phone while the program is going on. We will now have Marthiya by Brother Abul Qasim Megji with Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
Salawat. कैद खाने से रहा होकर चली उम्मे रुबा और दरे जिंदा पे کر کرتی تھی آؤ بکا، شام والو شام والو شام والو شام والو، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو شام، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو
شام والو،
قید کی تنہائیاں مار گئی ہے اسے، آئی ہے اس کو قضا قید میں روتے ہوئے، آئی ہے اس کو قضا قید میں روتے ہوئے، شام والو شام والو، میرے زائروں کو تم بات یہ بتا دینا، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو شام، باپ کی فرقت سہی قید کی ایذا سہی، سو نہ سکی خوف سے نہ رو سکی، سو نہ سکی خوف سے نہ رو سکی، شام والو شام والو، صبر کا سکینہ کو اس طرح سلا دینا، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو شام، تم نے تو مظلومہ پر کی ہے بہت سختیاں، در لگائے کبھی دی ہے کبھی گر کیا، در لگائے کبھی دی ہے کبھی گر کیا، شام والو شام والو، پھر بھی میری بچی کا کام تھا دعا دینا، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو، دور یہ جب سے ہوئی بابا سے اور بھائی سے، ڈرتی ہے بچی میری شمر کی پرچھائی سے، ڈرتی ہے بچی میری شمر کی پرچھائی سے، شام والو شام والو، شمر کو سکینہ کی قبر سے ہٹا دینا، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو شام، روتی رہی عمر بھر اب نہ رلانا اسے، شاہ کی مظلومی کا نوحہ سنانا اسے، شاہ کی مظلومی کا نوحہ سنانا اسے، شام والو شام والو تم ہی میری بچی کا زخموں کی دوا دینا، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو شام والو، مرکد سکینہ پر ایک دیا جلا دینا، شام والو شام والو شام والو شام والو، صلوات۔ کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، 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 دونوں بازو وہ شہنشاہ وفا کے تھامے، لاش عباس پہ شبیر بکا کرتے تھے، بھائی تم بعد ہمارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے، اس طرح لگتی نہ اکبر کے کلیجے میں سینہ، اس طرح ہوتی نہ سادات کے خیموں میں فغاں، یوں نہ زینب کے سہارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے ہوتے، عباس دلاور تو نہ خیمے جلتے، شام غربت نہ سکینہ کو تماچے لگتے، گوشوارے نہ اتارے جاتے، کاش عباس نہ مارے 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 جاتے، محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔
سورہ مبارکۃ الفاتحہ۔
اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم، الحمد للہ رب العالمین، والصلاة والسلام علی اشرف الانبیاء والمرسلین، سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا والشفيع لذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد والصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين وفقنا الله وإياكم بعلم وعمل صالح إن شاء الله بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقل ربي أدخلني مدخل صدق وأخرجني مخرج صدق واجعل لي من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In the previous nights, in the course of examining the sermon of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, we spoke about a number of different qualities and attributes that he highlights. Now in the following nights, I want to transfer the discussion to the khutbah that is delivered by the Holy Lady Zainab salamullahi alayha. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And some of the profound elements that we can extract from her words. But before going into that discussion, to add on value with respects to how we as human beings have been created, you find that, again, going back to some of the discussions we've had in the prior nights, find that there are certain akhlaqi concepts which are innately part and parcel of our being. That there are certain things which are considered to be as natural virtues and some things which are considered to be vices, naturally inclined within us. We repel certain characteristics, we are attracted by certain characteristics. And one of those characteristics is truthfulness. As-sidq, as it is known as within the Quranic language. As-sidq literally means when a person is truthful. And the opposite of it is when a person lies. When you look at the particular question, why do people lie? It's a very interesting question from a psychological perspective. The reason why people lie is because when you are presented with the opportunity to either tell the truth or to tell a lie, there is a process that is going on inside our heads. A process of pros and cons, benefits and damages. And so what's happening on a subconscious level or even on a conscious level is we're evaluating whether if I was to tell a lie, does it add more benefit to me if I was to tell the truth? Now the process of this is extremely quick. So in that specific circumstance, I make the decision to lie because by lying, I see that there is an added benefit. I benefit from lying. Whatever it may be, whether it be in the short term, medium or long term. At times, I opt to tell the truth because again, I see the value of telling the truth, whatever that value may be. So the reason why people lie within conversations or even on a political level, the reason is because there is always benefit in them for lying. The religion of Islam intervenes and tells us directly that there is no benefit in lying whatsoever. You as a human being, you think that there is a benefit in you for lying or by lying. But the reality is that over a long-term period, there is no benefit in it for you whatsoever. Revelation tells us this. There's a very interesting hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salatu wassalam. He says that when a person lies, he thinks that there is a benefit in it for him. He's taking a shortcut to receive that benefit. Whereas if he was to tell the truth and take the long cut, and to go through certain areas of damages that would hurt him by telling the truth, he would receive benefits that are far greater than the short-term benefits he receives from lying. That's profound. That's a very powerful narration which nurtures us to be good human beings. So the whole concept of lying, lies in itself is abnormal to our system, to our creation. It makes us cringeworthy when we lie and engage in lying. Lying goes against or is in direct conflict of faith and the teachings of the religion of Islam. Again, there's a very interesting hadith of Imam al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. He speaks about the standards of friends, and he speaks about how you and I should pick out our friends, and we should be very picky when picking our friends. He says, do not pick those who are considered to be as liars. He says, watch out for the liars, and not just people who directly lie to you. Sometimes we take it very personally when a friend of ours lies to us, but when they lie to others, it's not that personal for us. It's between them and the other people that speak with them. It says, no, watch out for the liars. They don't necessarily have to lie to you. See if they're lying to the people around them as well. Because you can never trust a liar. It says a liar will, through his lies, he will make those things which are far near for you and those things which are near far for you. They will create an illusion. They will create, for example, a mirage for you. They will warp reality for you through their words and through their actions. And ultimately, when you siphon down, you realize that no, the human being who is a liar, you can never trust them. And when you depend on a social relationship with someone that you cannot trust, nothing good comes from it. There's a concept that has been introduced, and it's a very interesting concept, and it's something for you to think about. It's known as pro-social lying. Pro-social lying, where a person should actively engage in lying white lies, small lies, to make others feel better. Now you may think that this is something good, isn't it? If someone asks you, for example, how do I look in this particular suit or in this dress? You lie to them and you tell them something that they want to hear to make them feel good, to make them feel happy. You go to someone's house, you don't like their food, they present you with some food. You tell them, no, I'm not that hungry. You're lying because you want to make them feel better. As in, how can this be bad? True. In fact, there are certain socialists who actively they go around and they propagate this. You should engage in pro-social lying because it enhances social relationships. Lie to people to make them feel better. Engage in white lies. What does Islam say about this? There's a very interesting hadith of Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. He says, do not engage in lying, whether it's a big lie or a small lie. It's a very clear hadith. Do not engage in lying. Any manifestations of lying, it is not permissible. He says, even if a person was to be serious when he's talking, even when he's humorous, even when a person is engaging in telling jokes and making others laugh, sometimes we throw a lie here and there, just for a good laugh. The Imam ﷺ says, stay away from this. Now you come from a psychological perspective. When a person engages in white lies, you may think that this is a very small thing. But essentially, all small things develop into a big thing. The evil habits that we have, the bad habits that we have, the unproductive habits that we have, at one point in our lives, they were very small and insignificant. But then because of our habituation to those particular patterns, it develops into something big. Something that we can now not get rid of. And the religion of Islam approaches this akhlaqi perspective from a very, sophisticated way. When you look at, for example, patterns of sins, a sin, the violation of God's law, at one point in time in our lives, it was something small. But then it develops into a sin. And it becomes a habit. And it becomes very hard for us to dissociate or distance ourselves from those particular sins. When you look at white lies in itself, from the apparent nature of it, doesn't harm anyone. But then it develops. You become desensitized from lying. It becomes part and parcel of your culture. It becomes part and parcel of your character. And then sooner or later, it becomes very easy for you to lie without you even acknowledging that you are engaging in a lie. They say during the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam, when Aisha married the Holy Prophet, Asma bint Umays narrates this. She says that we were there in the Prophet's house. The Prophet sat down on the table. He had like a bowl of milk. And he drank from some of this milk. And then he gave it to Aisha. Aisha at that point, she froze. She didn't know what to do. So Asma nudges her. She's just like, take the milk from the Prophet. So she takes the milk. The Prophet tells her, drink from the milk, just a little bit, and then pass it to the other women that are there in the house. So she drinks from the milk, and then she passes it on to the other women. The other women, she felt embarrassed. They felt embarrassed. So they turned to the Prophet and they said, Ya Rasulullah, we're not hungry. We're not hungry. We don't need to drink this milk. And the Prophet turns to them and says that, look, I know that you're hungry. I know that you're hungry, and it does not suit you to engage in lying. Very powerful words. And then they turned to the Prophet and they were quite shocked. They said, look, Ya Rasulullah, I know, okay, fine, we are hungry, but how does this lie, what we said when we said that we're not hungry, how is that even considered to be something significant? And the Prophet replies, he says, do you not know that every lie, big or small, it is written within the book of deeds? So in the apparent nature, we think that white lies is just something very insignificant, but in reality, it carries weight. When you look at social media is a system that is built on lies. Remember, what is a liar? A liar is that which makes things which are far appear near, and which things which are near appear very far. Social media, when you look at the whole concept of social media and what goes on social media, you realize that everything is just behind a screen. Everything is a lie. Everything is a fallacy. It's an illusion. What we see on social media is just the good. We never see bad things, for example, in the feeds of other people and what happens in their lives. We think, or we absorb this, we create this illusion that everyone, all of our friends in our profiles, everyone's having a good, lovely life. But then behind closed doors, many of them are suffering. You know, there was a study conducted in 2016, 2017. The Washington Post had a whole article written on this. They said there's a remarkable correlation between the usage of social media and plastic surgery. The people who are actively part and parcel of social media, 55% of those who opted for plastic surgery wanted to configure their physical features just so that they were able to look good on social media. It warps reality. You focus on yourself so much, but you forget to realize that people don't really focus on the small features that you have. When you're looking at the mirror, you always pick out your deficiencies. People don't care about your deficiencies. Allah has made you beautiful. Allah has made you handsome. And that should suffice for us to actually live our lives and develop a very strong mental habit of being happy, of living our lives and the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us. So the usage of social media has warped reality in such a way that we tend to believe in certain lies. And the funny thing is, and the irony behind this is that people who are actively involved in social media know that it is lies, but subconsciously it has an effect on us. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Now, when you look at the concept of truthfulness within the religion of Islam, very interestingly, Islam doesn't just focus on telling the truth, like focusing on the idea of telling the truth, that in your life you should be a person who tells the truth. No. Sidq, truthfulness, has many different variations and levels. When you refer to the kalam of the urafa, those who are masters of irfan and so on and so forth, they say that the first step for a person to engage in his spiritual journey is when they associate the right niyyah, when they engage with the right niyyah. Niyyah, the intention of the human being, if it is culminized or if it is synchronized with truthfulness, that is the first stage of a person beginning his spiritual journey. Many a times when we act certain amal, for example, if we speak, whether we go to work, whatever it may be, if it is done with the correct niyyah, with the correct intention, not only does it receive the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you realize that it is the stepping stone to your spiritual journey in seeking His proximity. The second level of sidq is kalam, when we speak with one another. The third level of sidq is when it is manifested in our a'mal. Look at the different dimensions of truthfulness that the religion of Islam presents. There is truthfulness within our a'mal as well. Again, the Urafah, they came and they said that if you want to know whether you are a truthful person in reality or not, there is a standard you should follow. What's that standard? Compare your actions with your words. If there is a correlation between how you act and how you speak, then know that you are a truthful person. But if you find yourself to be someone who says one thing and you act according to another, then you are not really a truthful person. Beyond that, a person who is most definitely truthful, you realize that there is a synchronization between his niyyah, his kalam, and his amal. There is a correlation between all of these three things. If there is truthfulness between all of these three things and each of them are in synchronization, this person has reached the highest maqam, the maqam of spirituality. But if his niyyah is in one direction and his words are in another and his actions are in another, the lack of correlation means that you are far away from the entity of truthfulness. When there is synchronization, this person has reached the highest maqam of spirituality. When you refer to the verse of the Holy Quran, when Allah begins to speak about Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, you know why the whole Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. You know why the Imam alayhi salam is constantly praised by the Holy Prophet of Islam, even by the verses of the Holy Quran? It's because he was able to reach the highest maqam of spirituality at a very young age. During the night of Hijrah, he sleeps at the bed of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Allah reveals the verse, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَشْرِي نَفْسَهُ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرَضَاتِ اللَّهِ. Those who are willing to give their lives for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why is this significant? It's significant because when a person has reached the maqam of truthfulness, where there is compatibility between niyyah, his words and his actions, he is willing to give his life to preserve the truth. He is willing to give his life to defend the truth. Imam Ali alayhi salam, at the time of Hijrah, the Prophet migrates. The Imam was in his early 20s. He wasn't, for example, someone in his 60s. He was in his early 20s. As in which 20-year-old has reached the stages of truthfulness that he is willing to give his life for it. Yes, the Imam was brave, but what's highlighted here is that he reached a spiritual maqam that he was willing to give his life for the Holy Prophet of Islam. Likewise in the Battle of Uhud, likewise in the Battle of Hunayn, when all the other companions, and there were senior companions as well, when they used to flee, the Prophet was left abandoned by just a handful of companions. Amongst them was Ali alayhi salam. This isn't to highlight his bravery. His bravery was one aspect of his identity and his character. But more importantly, it was the level of his spirituality. He recognized the truth, he preserved it, he submitted to it. He was willing to give his life for it. And he did so constantly throughout his entire life. And there was no level of inconsistencies. Just as how he was willing to give his life in the beginning of his life, the beginning of the message of Islam, he was also willing to give his life for the preservation of Islam towards the end of his years as well. Towards the end of his life. There was absolute consistency from the very beginning until the very end. That is spirituality. When you're able to reach that maqam, you're able to sustain and maintain it. And there is an absolute consistency throughout. There's no fluctuations. Beyond this, there is truthfulness in belief. So we spoke about niyyah, we spoke about words, we spoke about actions. But then there is the new level which is known as the level of belief, when there is truth in our aqeedah. Do you know why the religion of Islam is the most attracted religion in the world? Why are people in great numbers coming towards the religion of Islam? You know, at the same time, there are people who are leaving the religion of Islam. There was a very famous quote that was made a few years ago. It said, when a revert converted to the religion of Islam, and he was viewing all of these different types of videos on YouTube, seeing that Muslims were leaving the religion of Islam, he said, leave, because you are being replaced by people who are better, people who are stronger in belief. So just as how we are seeing people leaving the religion of Islam, we are seeing many who are coming towards it, embracing it, and are stronger in belief as well. The weak are living, but the strong are taking over. Why are people attracted towards the religion of Islam? Because Islam as a religion is a religion of truth. Question arises, how do I know Islam is the religion of truth? It's a very interesting question. How do I know that Islam is the religion of truth, considering the fact that we are surrounded by all of the different ideologies and different religions, different philosophies? Why is Islam the truth? The Islam is the religion of truth is because when you go back to its essential principles simply make sense. When you go back and you study Tawheed, for example, Tawheed, we believe that Allah is one. Why do we believe Allah is one? We don't turn to the Quran and say, well, the Quran tells me that Allah is one, therefore I believe Allah is one. It doesn't work that way. Likewise, I don't turn to the Imam alayhi salam and say, well, he said that Allah is one, therefore I believe that Allah is one. The source of our aqidah is our intellect. And Allah has created every single human being with a common denominator. And that is the intellect. That is common sense. That is logic. Through intellect, through logic, we're able to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're able to see and understand why Allah is one. And not that there are multiple gods, or not that there is no God whatsoever. We are able to identify the characteristics of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're able to identify which characteristics are not part of Him. We're able to identify His actions, His wisdom, His knowledge, and so on and so forth. All of this can be deduced through using aql. If you want to know if something is true or not within the religion of Islam, compare it to the aql. If it makes sense, take it. If it doesn't make sense and you have to go through a process of mental gymnastics, then you should start asking questions. Likewise, when you've now understood Tawheed, you go towards Nabuwah. Then slowly you start using your logic a bit more. You stretch it out a bit more. All of the different principles of Nabuwah, it makes sense. It correlates. It synchronizes with the aql. It makes sense. So we take it on board. Allah is all wise. Allah is all knowing. Therefore, He has to serve mankind. He has to help mankind in their spiritual progression. So He sends messengers. What are the characteristics of these messengers? And so on and so forth. All of it starts to make sense. When you therefore develop an affinity towards Tawheed and towards Nabuwah, then you can rely on the Quran and say the Quran is a manifestation of God's words. And whatever is preserved or whatever is mentioned within the Quran, you take it because you've now based your fundamental understanding and principles based on logic by understanding Tawheed and Nabuwah. The logic can only take you so far. Common sense, the aql can only take you so far. But once you've recognized that there is Tawheed and Nabuwah, you can therefore refer to the teachings of the Holy Prophet of Islam. There are many aspects within the religion of Islam which the aql can't understand. Hands down, the aql has no say in it whatsoever. A primal example is what happens after death. Can we use the aql to tell us and identify the different processes of what happens after death? No, we can't. We don't have that power and capacity. We are limited. But we refer to the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, or we refer to the teachings of the Holy Prophet of Islam, because we've solidified it using our aql. When you refer to, for example, some of our great scholars, amongst them Ibn Sina, amongst them Allama Tabatabai, amongst them Mullah Sadr, they have this very intricate, very interesting proof to prove the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's very strange, by the way. It's known as Burhan al-Siddiqeen. You know what Burhan al-Siddiqeen means? It means that you do not use anything to prove the existence of God. In order for you to prove the existence of God, all you need is God. Now, how does that even make sense? In order to know God, in order to know that there is a God, all you need is to use God. Usually we use creation. We look at the vastness of the design that Allah has created, and then we point and say, well, because of this grand design, there has to be a creator behind it. There's always a medium that we use in order to know that there is a God. Or for example, the fitrah. In the time of danger, the fitrah of the human being will call out to God for help. Again, we're using the fitrah as a medium to see that there is one God. But these scholars, they came forward and said that we don't need mediums to know that there is one God. If you want to know God, if you want to know that God exists, all you need is Allah. That's something that we can't simply understand, by the way. And of course, this is not a proof that we would use and utilize in our discussions with atheists. They would think you've gone mad. But you and I, people who've been worshipping Allah our entire lives, it's something for us to focus on. The Imam alayhi salam as-Sajjad salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. In some of his du'as, likewise the third holy Imam in Du'a Arafah, he says, Ya Allah, I came to know you through you. How does that even make sense? I came to know you through you. It goes back to this particular proof. Burhan al-Siddiqeen. Ya Allah, in order for me to recognize you, all I need is you. That's the highest stages of spirituality that a person can attain. And once he reaches it, he has this direct connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you have this synchronization between ilm, amal, between niyyah, words, actions, belief, there is a correlation and a connection and an association with all of these with one another. You recognize that this person has fully understood Allah and he is working with Allah. He is working towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he is manifested and he's manifested truthfulness in his entire being. Hence the ayah of the Holy Quran comes forward and says, Rabbi adkhilni mudkhala sidqin. Whenever I enter to do something, Ya Allah, let it be a representation of truth. And whenever I come out of it, let it be a representation of truth. Starting whatever I do in that act and how I end that act, let it be an infusion of truthfulness. A hypocrite is the complete opposite. A hypocrite will say one thing and he will come and do another. There is no synchronization. That's why they are damned within the Quran. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Having said this, let's talk about trustworthiness. And there is a very strong link between being truthful and being trustworthy. In fact, I would go as far as saying that these two qualities and characteristics are synonymous with one another. You cannot separate these two qualities and characteristics from one another. If a person is truthful, then by necessity he has to be trustworthy. And if a person is trustworthy, then by necessity you know that he is truthful. As in your social, for example, environments, have you ever come across a person who is truthful but not trustworthy? Have you ever come across a person who is trustworthy but a liar? It doesn't make sense. A person who is trustworthy will always be truthful. Now some of you may say, but sometimes I come across certain individuals who I trust them. They're truthful, they've never lied to me, but it's hard for me to trust them because they're lazy, because they're complacent, or because they're quite slow in doing certain works. Well, if you actually tell them to do something for you, then they themselves will admit that they won't be able to do it. There's this infusion of truthfulness and trustworthiness within the human being. They are synonymous, and you cannot separate one from the other. Within our social lives and the way societies have been constructed, it is an absolute necessity for a person to understand that trustworthiness and truthfulness is absolutely necessary for societies to exist. As in, imagine living in a society where people don't trust one another, where people do not, for example, see others as truthful. You see, this is something which is considered to be a virtue, innate virtue. We love people who are truthful. We hate liars. But if you come across a society, or if you're part of a social construct where people are not considered to be truthful and it's very hard for you to trust someone, imagine how miserable that becomes for you as a human being. In your workplace, in your universities, even at home, for example, if there is no trustworthiness between the spouses, then that marriage is on the brink of failure. If the husband is not capable of trusting the wife, or the wife is not capable of trusting the husband, then that interaction, that social relationship becomes very, very toxic, and it becomes very difficult to maintain. Trustworthiness and truthfulness are two key elements for a society to prosper. Now, what's interesting is when you bring in the religion of Islam and you see how you and I interact or even hold values within the religion of Islam, you realize that the religion of Islam is based entirely on trust. Everything that you and I know, all of the knowledge that you and I have, where is it come from? It's come from scholars, hasn't it? Scholars who have sat on the manabir and they have delivered information to the people. There is trust. Because of trust, everything that we know of is relied on by the words of the ulama. The moment a person begins to question the ulama, the moment a person begins to question, for example, the validity and the authenticity of an alim, all of a sudden you're questioning that trust that exists. The moment that trust begins to fall apart, the fabrics of Islam begin to fall apart as well. Everything that we know from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, from the narrations, it is based on the scholarly works of the ulama. And it has been passed down from one generation to another until it has reached us in our hands today. If we question or we place a question mark on the whole process, then there is nothing left for us to hold on to. You think trust is important just within our social circles? The heritage of Islam depends on trust. I'll give you a very simple example. When you look at this book known as Kamil al-Ziyarat, it's there available in English. Ibn Qawlaway al-Qummi wrote this book with the intention. He said, look, I want to seek proximity towards Allah. I want to seek proximity towards the Prophet, towards the Holy Lady, towards Amir al-Mu'mineen, and of course the other Imams. And he said, the sole purpose for me to write this book is so that I want to tell the readers the benefits, the spiritual benefits of performing ziyarah. And then he talks about the strategy that he uses. He says that, look, I as a scholar, I have certain standards. And I have made it upon myself that I am not to add any hadith in this book that is from weak sources. So every hadith is from a reliable, strong source according to my scholarly experience. Today, in 2022, whenever scholars refer to Kamil al-Ziyara, they say either they admit that every narration in this book is sahih. Not only that, but all the narrators in the chain of narrators mentioned in all of the different narrations are strong and trustworthy. Why? Because they've relied on the words and the scholarly capacity of Ibn Qawlaway al-Qummi. They trust Ibn Qawlaway al-Qummi. They say that this person was a great faqih, this person was a great muhaddith, a person who interacts with ahadith. He was a great man of scholar, a great man of knowledge, and he was a scholar in his own right. We trust his scholarship. And therefore we come forward and treat this book and every hadith within it as authentic. That's a great relying on trust. Trust of a scholar that lived centuries ago. But today you find, for example, there are people that say, well, yes, scholars, they had their own standards. We can't trust them. We have to create new standards. That's treading on dangerous grounds. There was a conversation I had very recently with a very dear brother of mine. And we were talking about tawassul. It's a very hot topic nowadays, isn't it? It's blown out of proportion, unfortunately. And he said, during the time of the Prophet, fine, there are ayats in the Quran which the people came and they used to ask certain things from the Prophet instead of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then after the Prophet died, we don't see people coming towards the grave of the Prophet. On the contrary, I said to him, yeah, we have sources, we have a hadith where people used to come towards the grave of the Holy Prophet of Islam and they used to ask from the grave. Not only that, this particular practice carried on for at least 600 to 700 years. The first person who questioned this whole belief system or practice system was Ibn Taymiyyah. And Ibn Taymiyyah came centuries later. The Sunnis as well as the Shias, they used to practice in the idea of going towards the grave and seeking needs from the graves. Even Imam Shafi, when you refer to his works, a great Sunni scholar, one of the 4 Imams, even he used to encourage his followers to go towards the grave of the Ahlul Bayt. And he has beautiful lines of poetry depicting this. He says, whenever you go, perform the ziyarah and ask from them. Imam Shafi was a Sunni. So Sunnis and Shias both used to engage in tawassul and seeking hajats from the graves of the Prophet. And this continued for 7 centuries. So I said, look, for 7 centuries this existed. Does that mean that they were all wrong? He says, yes, they were all wrong. As in, imagine the consequences of that. 7 centuries of scholarship, all of them were mushriks. And they're all burning in the fires of hell. There has to be a level of trust. He said to me, well, this is taqleed in Aqidah. You can't really tell me that this century, this scholar in this particular century did this, and therefore it suffices me to believe in it. It's not about taqleed in Aqidah. This is to do with trust and trusting scholarship. That they had certain actions and they had certain forms of worship, that they had certain practices that has survived over the centuries. We have to trust the scholars at times. For us to question the trustworthiness of scholars, that's not looking good as a madhab in its entirety. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So when you look at it from a religious perspective, and the heritage that we've adopted and engage with is entirely dependent on trust. Beyond that, the madhlumiyya of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam. The madhlumiyya of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salam is that they were considered to be truthful individuals. Remember, the correlation of truthfulness and trustworthiness is that they can never be separated. They're synonymous. They're connected with one another. The madhlumiyya of the Ahl al-Bayt is that they were considered to be truthful individuals but not trustworthy to take knowledge from them. And there are many examples and evidences behind this. You take the example of the 6th Holy Imam. The 6th Holy Imam is considered to be the teachers of many of the different ulamas that have survived in Sunni history. Many of them learned under Imam Jaffer as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When you refer to the biography of the Holy Imam, even Sunni great scholars admit that this person was on a whole different level when it came to knowledge, a whole different level when it came to ibadah, a whole different level when it came to piety and generosity and so on and so forth. The praises are long, but he wasn't trustworthy when it came to taking Islamic knowledge from them. When you refer to Bukhari, for example, there's not a single narration that is mentioned from Imam Jaffer as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Not a single narration will you find where he says that Jaffer as-Sadiq, the son of Al-Baqir alayhi salam, has said this and this. Considering that they were considered to be the most knowledgeable people and personalities in their time. On the other hand, when you come to the biography of Umar ibn Sa'ad, you have the likes of Imam al-Ijli. Imam al-Ijli, famous Sunni scholar, he comes forward and he says Umar ibn Sa'ad was a Kufi and he was considered to be thiqah. He was considered to be trustworthy. When he said this publicly, the people came to him and said, how can you consider the one who killed Hussein ibn Ali to be trustworthy? When you look at Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani again, when he speaks about Umar ibn Sa'ad, he says this person is considered to be saduqan. Forget someone who is a sadiq, he is saduq. He was a person who was embodied in truthfulness. It was part and parcel of his character. Again, they challenged him. So how can you consider a person who was the assassinator and the one who slaughtered Abi Abdullah alayhi salam to be saduqan? Again, when you go back to history, you realize that the madhlumiyya of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam is that they tried their very best to destroy their reputation. But the fact that their reputation stands very strong even today, 1400 years ago, this is something quite extraordinary. That Allah has made sure that the reputation of the Imams alayhim salam survive even today. And those who find it will find it and they will submit to it. When you come towards the idea of trusting Allah, forget trusting scholars, forget trusting the Ahl al-Bayt, forget trusting the Quran. When you come back to the idea of trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we fundamentally believe that Allah is truthful. He is the absolute manifestation of truth. True or no? There is no reason for Allah to lie. All of the promises He's made in the Holy Quran, there is no reason for Him to go against those promises. Does it benefit Him the way it benefits me when I lie? Does it benefit Allah when He lies? No, of course not. He is beyond such limitations. There is no reason for Allah to lie. Likewise, if He was to tell the truth, does it harm Him in any way? Sometimes it harms me when I tell the truth. Can I apply the same to Allah? Of course not. Allah is beyond such limitations. Allah is the absolute manifestation of truth. Whatever He says is the truth. Whatever He does is the truth. And therefore in my life, for example, if I come across certain areas where I am going through periods of adversities, periods of harshness, I turn to Allah and I say, Ya Allah, it is through your wisdom that you have chosen this for me. It is through your ilm that you have chosen this particular path for me. I trust that you have chosen only the best for me. When you mentally prepare yourself to come to submit to the idea that Allah chooses only that which is best for you, then it's easier for you to go through the adversity because you know that there is good that will emanate from it. Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam was in the prisons. When you refer to the story of Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam, they say that when he was in the prison, there were two prison mates. And then they both had a dream. And then they asked Nabi Yusuf to interpret the dream. Nabi Yusuf says there is the one person that will go on to live and he'll be prosperous and so on and so forth. And the other one will become the servant of the king. And he will present or he will deliver wine for the king. This person will be crucified and the vultures will eat from him. True or no? It's a very famous story. When they were released from the prisons, Nabi Yusuf tells the person who would survive, he would say, go to the king and tell him about me, because I fear that the king has forgotten me. Go and tell him about me. The Quran says, فَأَنْسَاهُ الشَّيْطَانِ. Shaitan intervened and he made the person forget. In the hadith, Jibreel descends and he comes towards Nabi Yusuf alayhi salam. He says, Ya Yusuf, tell me, who was the one that made you the most beloved son in the eyes of your father? He said, Allah. He said, when you fell into the well, who was the one that allowed all of the caravans to allow that particular caravan to come to that specific well and not to all the other wells that were in the surrounding areas? He says, Allah. He says, when the people came towards the well, they started throwing stones into the well to see if there was water. Who protected you from the stones? He says, Allah. He says, who delivered you out of the well? He says, Allah. He says, who protected you and your dignity when you were surrounded by women in that particular circumstance? He says, Allah. He says, why is it now that you have referred to a man to help you come out of prison and not refer or place your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You see, the moment that I understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the absolute manifestation of truth, alongside truth there is trust. Why is it that every time we go through certain adversities in our lives, we complain to Allah? We complain to Allah because of our short-sightedness. Alongside truthfulness, there is trustworthiness. There is this absolute culmination between trust and truth. Allah is the absolute manifestation of truth, therefore I have to trust Him in His decisions. At the time of Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, they say there was a man by the name of Hammad ibn Habib. Hammad ibn Habib, he went towards Mecca for Hajj, and he was part of a caravan, he was part of a group. He entered a place by the name of Zubala, and all of a sudden there were dark winds. There was a storm, a sandstorm that took place. And this caravan scattered in all different directions. He said it was very severe, but in the distance I could see a tree. So I rushed towards the tree. As I came closer towards the tree, I saw that there was a person in white clothes who was reciting whatever he was reciting, salah or whatnot. So as I rushed towards the tree, but I concealed myself, I disguised myself so that he couldn't see me. So as I approached this tree, I saw that this person was praying his salah. And he was engaged in dhikr. It says, I looked around and I found a stream, a little pond or, a source of water. So he said, I came and I performed wudu and I came back. And I joined him in his salah. He says that when I joined him in his salah, he says there was a different aura altogether. He says, I've never felt this level of connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, simply by praying behind this person. He said as soon as he finished his prayers, he picked up his things and he began to walk away. So I quickly picked up my things and I chased behind him. And I said to him, oh man, tell me where I am. I need help. I'm lost. I need to get to Mecca for Hajj. This man turned around and he said to me, he said, Wallah, if you had placed your trust in Allah, you would never be lost. You would have never been lost. He said, come with me. So I followed him. He said that as I began to turn, or he began to turn behind the tree, he said, as I followed him and I began to turn around the tree, he grabbed my hand and all of a sudden it was the time of dawn. He says, within a fraction of a second, it was the time of dawn. When I looked around, we were in a different place altogether. This young man, he turned to me, he said to me, good news for you, we've reached the city of Mecca. He said, I looked around and I began to hear all of the pilgrims chanting and reciting labbaik and so on and so forth as they were moving towards the masjid. I was shocked, so I turned to him and I said, who are you? Answer my question, who are you? And then he replies, he says, as you have asked me, because you have asked me, I'll tell you, I am Zainul Abidin as-Sajjadeen. So you have to realize, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So you have to realize that the message that is part and parcel of the Ahlul Bayt is that not only do we consider Allah to be truthful, and it's absolutely vital that we embrace ourselves with this noble characteristic, but alongside it, trust one another. And because Allah is the absolute manifestation of truth, He is also trustworthy, and we should trust Him in all of our different affairs in life. Abu Abdullah alayhi salam, before going towards the battlefield, there's a very short conversation that takes place between him and Bibi Zainab. He comes towards the holy lady Bibi Zainab and he says, Asta'iddu bil bala. He says, prepare yourself for bala, that is to come. He says, you will be confronted by enemies. But do not fear, Ya Zainab, Allah will protect you. There is that sense of strength that He is now delivering to her. That Allah has chosen this for you, and don't worry, trust Allah, He will protect you. Allah will protect you against your enemies. Then he enters the battlefield, and he fights, and they slaughtered him. After the events of Karbala, when they were dragged towards the city of Kufa, she enters the presence of Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad turns to one of his advisors. He says, who is that woman there? He says, that is Zainab bint Ali. He says, Ya Zainab, tell me, how do you feel of what Allah has done to you and your family? And she replies, she says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. The power of trust and how she always refers back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with such positivity is something remarkable. Whatever I saw nothing but beauty. In other narrations, Ibn Ziyad tells Zainab, she says, Ya Zainab, tell me, how do you feel of what's happened and what Allah has done to you and your family? She turns around and she says, Yabna Ziyad, Allah has destined martyrdom for our family. Our men hastened towards it. Yabna Ziyad, very soon you alongside them will stand before Allah. Gather all of your arguments that you have and be ready to present it to Allah. It goes back to the whole concept of trust. Then you have the young daughter, Sukaina. Sukaina, they said that when the tents were burning, she came across Hamid ibn Muslim. Hamid ibn Muslim approaches her and he says to her, oh young daughter, young girl, where are you going? And she replies, she says, Ya Sheikh, tell me, have you read the ayah of the Holy Quran? فَأَمَّا الْيَتِيمَ فَلَا تَقْهَرْ. He says, I have. She says, I am the yatim of Ali Muhammad. Oh Sheikh, have you read the ayah of the Holy Quran? وَأَمَّا السَّائِلَ فَلَا تَنْحَرْ. He says, I have. He says, I have one request, Ya Sheikh. He says, what is it? He says, take me towards the lands of Al-Gharri. Take me towards the lands of Najaf. Hamid's wondering, what's there in the lands of Najaf? So he asks, he says, what's there in the lands of Najaf? She replies, she says, I've been hearing my aunt Zainab say that there is a grave in Najaf. Whosoever approaches this grave and provides their needs, they will see an answer emanate from this grave. Take me towards the lands of Najaf. He replies, he says, oh young girl, Najaf is very far. Is there anywhere else I can take you? She says, oh man, take me towards the Furat. He says, come, I'll take you towards the Furat. As she approaches the Furat, she sees Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. She sees his body. She rushes and hastens towards him. She embraces him. Oh my uncle, stand and rise. Defend us, oh my uncle. Look what they did to us after you left us. They say that when all of the ladies and children were gathered, when they were gathered one by one, they were forced to go towards the battlefield. They saw all of the shuhada. They say that Zainab at this moment, she turned towards Baqi, she turned towards her mother and she said, "Oh my mother, look what they did to your flesh and blood. They erected his head on the spears. They weltered his body in blood and sand. Look what they did to your daughters. They burned down the tents and their shelter. They mounted them on camels without saddles." Qurra ibn Qais al-Tamimi, he says, "I was there on the 10th of Muharram. Wallah, there are many things I have forgotten. Walakin ma anta qawla Zainab hina marrat bi akhiha." He says, "By God, there is one thing I will never forget, and that was when Zainab walked past the body of her brother Abu Abdullah. They asked him, what did she do? He says that she cried out, هذا حسين بالأراء مقطع الأعضاء مرمل بالدماء." She turned to Rasulullah, she said, "Ya Rasulullah, this is your grandson Hussein, abandoned in the sands of Karbala. They cut his body into pieces. They drenched his body in his blood. وبناتك السبايا وذريتك مقتلة تسفي علي السبا." Ya Rasulullah, they have taken your daughters as prisoners. They have taken your daughters as prisoners, and your lineage has been cut off, and the wind blows on their bodies. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. Matem Hussein.
Hi, hi, Zainab, hi, hi, Sham. Hi, hi, Zainab, hi, hi, Sham. Hi, hi, Zainab, hi, hi, Sham. थई गई बर्बाद ज़ैनब, कोने करूं फरियाद, कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी, कोने करूं फरियाद। घर थयू बर्बाद गाजी, कोने करूं फरियाद, कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी, कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी, कोने करूं फरियाद। पानी न माटे नहर सीधाव्या, जाई नेड़न थी पाछा न आविया। राह जुए छे तरसी सकीना, पानी वगड़ ज्यूं होटो पड़ आविया। तरस्या छे सोवार गाजी, कोने करूं फरियाद, कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी, कोने करूं फरियाद। पाणी वगड़ हाय तड़पड़े असगर बाई उठाव्यो ने सामे छे लश्कर जालिम ने मारियूं तीर गला पर खूमा नहाव्यो मासूम असगर तीरों नो थયું वरसात गाजी कोने करूं फरियाद લઈનો ને ડર હતું તમારો તમે હતા બાઈનો સહારો કેમ રિસાયા બાઈ બહનતી કેમ લીધો દરિયાનો કિનારો પાછા આવો અબ્બાસ ગાઝી કોને કરું ફરિયાદ કોને કરું ફરિયાદ ગાઝી आले पयंबर नहर किनारे आले पयंबर नहर किनारे टड़वड़े छे पानी ना माड़े धरती पर लाशो छे तीरो नो हमलो दुश्मन नो लश्कर आवी रह्यू छे कोने दुबाई आवाज गाजी कोने करूं कोने करूं લાગી છે અકબર ના દિલે ભરછી લાગી છે અકબર ના દિલે ભરછી જોઈને મંઝર દુર્જે છે દડતી બાઈનો સડ છે જુદું બદનતી થઈ ગઈ હું દૂર વતનતી કોઈ નથી આધાર ગાઝી કોને કરું ફરિયાદ કોને કરું ફરિયાદ ગાઝી કોને કરું ફરિયાદ કોને કરું ફરિયાદ ગાઝી એક બાઈના ગલે છે ખંજર બીજાના હાથો માછે લોહી एक बाई ना गले छे खंजर बीजाना हाथो छे लोई मातर कोने बुलाऊं मदद माटे सामे उभू छे यजीदी लश्कर करे छे सो पुकार गाजी कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी बाई तम हो सुई गया नहर पर कोने बुलावे मदद ज़ैनब खैमा छे खाली रन छे खाली बाकी रयाना कासिमो अकबर कोने दुबाई आवाज गाजी कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद छिनवाई ज़ैनब निहाय चादर कोने बुलावे मदद खाहर छिनवाई ज़ैनब निहाय चादर कोने बुलावे मदद खाहर बेटा बरादर कत्ल थई गया रन मा हक पर करबल मा सुई गया बाकी छे एक बीमार गाजी कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद खुलू छे माथू चादर नथी बाजुओ बांधेला छे रसंती कोने करूं फरियाद हूँ बाई मरी गया सो जुल्मो सितमती केम सहूं आघात गाजी कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद कोने करूं फरियाद गाजी رڑی رڑی نے کہے سکینہ، رڑی رڑی نے کہے سکینہ، ہوئی جاؤں چھے ہوے مدینہ. کاکا نے کہہ دیو پاچھا آوے، پانی کدی پر ہوے نہ دل ماں. آویو مدینہ یاد غازی، کونے کروں فریاد، کونے کروں فریاد غازی. کیم نہ آویا مدد بائی، کیم بہننی یاد نہ آوی. ظالموں لوٹی لی دی رنما، جیون بڑنی بدی کمائی. نبی نو گر تھیو برباد غازی، کونے کروں فریاد، کونے کروں فریاد غازی، کونے کروں فریاد. چاروں طرف چھے یزیدی لشکر، تنہا رن مال پیمبر. مظلوم زینب کونے بلاوے، کوئی نہ تھی ہوے رن مبائی. خیمہ ماں ہوے آگ لاگی زینب، کونے کروں فریاد، کونے کروں فریاد غازی، کونے کروں فریاد، کونے کروں فریاد غازی، کونے کروں فریاد.
نادے علی علی یا علی،
نادے علی علی یا علی،
نادے علی علی یا علی،
نادے علی علی یا علی.
بادشاہ و جن و بشر یا علی،
نادے علی علی یا علی.
آپ کا فرزند حسین غریب،
نادے علی علی یا علی.
کشتہ خنجر کے پدر یا علی، صاحب شمشیر و دو سر یا علی، یاور محبوب خدا یا علی.
راج دلارا زہرا ہے، راج دلارا زہرا کا کھمی ہے سا ہے. راج دلارا زہرا کا ہنسا ہے. راہ خدا میں جلدی کی، آگے جانے والوں نے صبح کے ساتھ ہی چھوٹ گئے. شام ہوئی اب تنہا ہے، راج دلارا زخمی ہے اور پیاسا ہے. راج دلارا زہرا ساغے. اکبر و قاسم کوئی نہیں، آس بدے تو کس بدے. دریا چھیننے والا بھی دریا چھین کے سوتا ہے. راج دلارا زہرا کا ہے، راج دلارا آسا ہے. اکبر و قاسم کوئی نہیں، آس بدے تو کس بدے. دریا چھیننے والا بھی دریا چھین کے سوتا ہے. راج دلارا زخمی ہے ہے راج می غیر ساغے کل جو نبی کے دوش پہ تھا آج وہ سر ہے نیزے پر ایک زمانہ ایسا تھا ایک زمانہ ایسا ہے راہ دلارا زخمی غیر ہے راج دلارا آسا ہے کل جو نبی کے دوش پہ تھا آج وہ سر ہے نیزے پر ایک زمانہ ایسا تھا ایک زمانہ ایسا ہے راہ دلارا کا زخمی ہے راج دلارا ہنسا ہے موت یہ تیری کیسی تھی مرنے والے تیرے لیے مجلس بستی بستی ہے ماتم صحرا صحرا ہے راہ دلارا
اے میرے آقا حسین اے میرے مولا حسین اے میرے آقا حسین اے میرے مولا حسین اے میرے آقا حسین اے میرے مولا حسین تجھ سا وہ پیاسا گلا شمر نے کاٹا گلا تجھ سا وہ پیاسا گلا شمر نے کاٹا گلا اے میرے آقا حسین اے میرے مولا حسین اے میرے اے میرے لاشا حیرن میں پڑا لاشا حیرن میں پڑا دیکھوں میں کیوں کر بلا اے میرے آقا حسین اے میرے مولا حسین اے میرے آقا کیوں نہ ہو آنکھیں میری کیوں نہ ہو آنکھیں میری کھنبری صورت تیری اے میرے آقا حسین اے میرے مولا حسین اے میرے آقا حسین پانی نہ تجھ کو دیا پانی نہ تجھ کو دیا دیکھوں میں کیا کربلا اے میرے حسین اے میرے اے میرے پانی پلاؤں آ میرے ازگار تجھ کو جو پائے مادر مستر تجھ کو جو پائے مادر مستر پانی پلاؤں آ میرے ازگار جھولا جھولاؤں آ میرے ازگار جھولا جھولاؤں دودھ پلاؤں آ میرے ازگار تجھ کو جو پائے مادر مستر تجھ کو جو پائے مادر مستر پانی پلاؤں آ میرے تجھ کو سناؤں قصہ اکبر تجھ کو سناؤں قصہ اکبر آ میں جلاؤں آ میرے اصغر تجھ کو جو پائے مادر مستر تجھ کو جو پائے مادر پانی پلاؤں آ زخمی گلے کو ہوگی اذیت زخمی گلے کو ہوگی اذیت ہنسلی بناؤں آ میرے اصغر تجھ کو جو پائے مادر مستر تجھ کو جو پائے مادر مستر پانی پلاؤں سونا ہے جنگل جلتی ہے ریتی سونا ہے جنگل جلتی ہے ریتی گھر میں سلاؤں آ میرے اصغر تجھ کو جو مادر موس بس تجھ کو جو اچھا پانی پلاؤں آ میرے اصغر جھولا جھولاؤں آ میرے اصغر جھولا جھولاؤں دودھ پلاؤں آ میرے اصغر سن
آ میرے من آب نبی خواہم عباس امو جانم من عباس امو جانم من آب نبی خواہم سکائے شہید دارم عباس علم دارم سکائے یتیمانم بے منصب یارم من آب نبی خواہم آب نبی خواہم عباس امو جواب دارم عباس علم دارم سکائے یتیمانم بے منصب یارم من آب نبی خواہم عباس امو جانم من شہید دارم میں ام جوان من اے روح روان من درتے تو بحال من من آب نبی خواہم جواب عباس امو جانم من شہید دارم میں ام غریب من اے ام طبیب من سردار شہید من من آب نبی خواہم شمر مکم جفرا اولاد مصطفی تشنا شمر لئی دگارا خوف خون از خدا را باب سکینہ ایزا مکشتا ہے خدا را مرحبا حسین تشنا شمر لئی دگارا خوف خون از خدا را باب سکینہ ایزا مکشتا ہے خدا را شمر مکم جفرا سارے حسین مظلوم شد زتن جدارا حضرت قاسم عزازا شد کلبرا را
اولاد مصطفی را شمر مکم جفر اولاد مصطفی حسین لوٹ گیا مدینہ یا ساکین المدینہ قتل ہوئے
قتل ہوئے حسین یا سکین لوٹ گیا فاطمہ زہرا کا لال رن میں ہوا پائے مال چل بسے سوئے جینا یا سکین المدینہ قتل لوٹ گیا اکبر و اصغر چلا قاسم حسن چلا خالی ہوا مدینہ یا سکین المدینہ قتل مدینہ بانو کا ارما لوٹا شکل نبی چل بسا سینے پہ کھایا سینہ یا سکین المدینہ قتل لوٹ گیا شام کے زندان میں قید کی حالات میں چل بسی ہے سکینہ یا سکین المدینہ قتل ہوئے حسین حسین منی وانا من الحسین حسین منی وانا کہتے تھے شاہ زماں مرحبا کہتے تھے شاہ زماں حسین منی وانا الحسین مولا نے سر کٹا دیا اسلام کے لیے غربت میں گھر لٹا دیا اسلام کے لیے حسین منی وانا من الحسین مالک کونین حسین منی اے شاہ تشن کام یہ تیرا ہی کام تھا اصغر کا خون بہا دیا اسلام کے لیے حسین منی کہتے تھے شاہ زماں کہتے تھے شاہ زماں حسین منی دنیا منا رہی ہے تیرے غم کو اے حسین تم نے گلا کٹا دیا اسلام کے لیے حسین منی
کہتے تھے شاہ زماں مالک کونین کہتے تھے شاہ زماں مالک کونین حسین منی بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین احمد مختار کا جانی ہوں میں حیدر صفدر کی نشانی ہوں میں دین پیمبر کی جوانی ہوں میں فاطمہ کا یوسف ثانی ہوں میں بھائی حسن ہے میرا میں ہوں حسین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین بالی سکینہ دل کا چین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین دیکھ یتیمہ کو ستایا تو کیا دکھتے ہوئے دل کو دکھایا تو کیا گرکیاں دے دے کے رلایا تو کیا منہ باہوں پہ تماچے بھی لگایا تو کیا سہم کے مر جائے گی بنت الحسین بالی سکین ہے میرے دل کا چین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین نازوں کی پالی ہے میری محجبی پاپ کی شیدا ہے وہ ماہ مبی گرکیاں کھانے کی وہ عادی نہیں دیکھ وہ روئی تو ہلے گی زمین تجھ کو لحد میں بھی ملے گا نہ چین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین ذبح پیاسا مجھے کرتا ہے تو قہر خدا سے نہیں ڈرتا ہے تو پاؤں میرے سینے پہ رکھتا ہے تو ہاتھ میرے خون سے بھرتا ہے تو بھی نہ پائے گا میرے بعد چین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے دل کا چین
شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین شمر سے کہتے تھے شاہ مشرقین بالی سکینہ ہے میرے یا سیدی یا عباس یا ابو الفضل العباس سکینہ کے چچا جان یا ابو الفضل العباس علمدار حسینہ یا ابو الفضل العباس حسین شہید کربلا واویلا عباس علمدارم چی شد واویلا اکبر نوجوام چی شد واویلا یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
Mu'mineen, after jihad, please be seated safely so Tabarak can be served safely. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين وسيد الوسيين السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن السلام عليك يا مهدي هذه الأمة والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.